السلام عليكم.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله شيخنا.
شلونكم عزيزي؟
الحمد لله، أنتم شلونكم؟
الحمد لله
الله
رب
الله
العالمين. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى
اللهم صل
الطاهرين.
على محمد وآل محمد. I'm just starting
اللهم
the
صل على
YouTube
محمد.
live right
إن
now.
شاء
Okay,
الله إن شاء الله
we're live.
إن
Okay.
شاء الله.
There's not many people today, شيخنا.
عفوا
There's,
عزيزي.
I said there's not many people.
Well, we can start or we can wait. Your call.
I don't know. Do you think we should wait like just a few more minutes until like 2 or
Yeah, we'll
3
give it 5 minutes.
people join? All
Let's
right,
give it 5 minutes إن شاء الله.
Okay,
إن شاء الله.
السلام عليكم.
عليكم السلام ورحمة الله.
بابا شلون وضعك؟
يا وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله. الحمد لله رب العالمين.
نعم.
الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله.
عجب ماكو حد بابا مصطفى.
والله I don't know.
خالد انت وين بكربلاء؟
اي نعم ابوي. اي انا هسه بكربلاء الحمد لله.
بابا خابر مصطفى خابر ابو احمد وخابر جعفر، قل لهم الشيخ لايف من كربلاء من داخل الضريح على مود يبلغون الناس رأسا. خابر جعفر.
هسه
Mustafa, what's the word? You muted yourself. Unmute yourself.
I said let's get started, Sheikhna. We got a few people to join. Alhamdulillah. All right.
Did you call Jafar?
Allah.
I didn't call him Ammu. No, I texted our group so they can join.
Okay, where's Mehdi Aboud? Where's Ahmed? Where are the boys?
Mehdi Aboud has he has some schoolwork to do. Ahmed has an exam, so they're not going to be able to join.
Where's Muhammad Makki? Why isn't he tuning in?
Well, I don't know.
I'll call him. Inshallah. Yalla. Are you guys ready?
Inshallah.
أبو نبأ أنت موجود؟
Yeah, he's here. He's in the Zoom.
السلام عليكم.
حبيبي عليكم السلام. أبو نبأ ممكن تبلغ أبو أحمد إنه النقل من الإمام الحسين من داخل الضريح؟
إن شاء الله هسه شوف. صار
اي والله بالك تتخابره لان هو كلش مشتاق لهالشغله هاي.
ان شاء الله.
All right, Sheikh, so let's get started.
ان شاء الله.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Respected Sheikh, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Tonight's lecture is going to be about Sayyida Khadija. And Sheikh Khalid is sitting in front of the shrine of Imam Hussein, if I'm not mistaken.
Absolutely correct.
Is that right?
Absolutely correct.
The shrine of Imam Hussein. So inshallah, we could get a little tour by the end of his lecture today and do our virtual ziyarah.
We won't be able to today because there's a large number of zawar today. They would not allow us to. Inshallah, we'll have to do it another day where there's a smaller crowd.
All right, inshallah. Inshallah. Okay, so without further ado, let's welcome Samahat al-Shaykh Khalid wa salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. صلى الله عليك يا سيدي يا رسول الله. صلى الله عليك وعلى أهل بيتك الطيبين الطاهرين. صلى الله عليك يا مولاي وابن مولاي يا أبا عبد الله. غريب يا مظلوم كربلاء. وزمن اعتصم بحبلكم أمن من لجأ إلى حصنكم. يا ليتنا كنا معكم سيدي فنفوز فوزا عظيما. In the name of God, the merciful, the beneficent, all prayer and praise is due to the Prophet Muhammad and his holy household. Indeed, today we commemorate the passing, the death of Our Lady, our Sayyida, Khadija al-Kubra. What can we say about Khadija al-Kubra in order to do her justice? In actuality, we cannot do her justice. We cannot do justice to Our Lady Khadija. This is due to the fact that Khadija is beyond our comprehension and recognition, in all honesty. And I'm not saying this as a way of me trying to say that trying to give her something that she doesn't already have. The fact of the matter is, Sayyidah Khadija, the Prophet himself named her Sayyidat al-Nisa. Before that, it was well known, it was documented that during Jahiliyyah, before Islam, she was known as At-Tahira, the pure woman. She was also known as Sayyidatu Quraysh, the lady of all of Quraysh, the number one lady in all of Quraysh. This is due to her aspect, to her purity. Now, there are those who try to say that Sayyidina Khadija alayhi salam was married before the Prophet, or that she had daughters from another marriage before the Prophet, or that she was a lot older than the Prophet. And all of those we need to address. First and foremost, we have to realize one thing. The history of Ahlul Bayt differs at some points, if not a lot of points, with the common history. The common history were written by the kings, the emperors, the dynasties of the time, whether it be the Umayyad dynasty, the Abbasi dynasty, so on and so forth. When they wrote what benefited them, and they left out what did not benefit them. Not only that, they instilled and wrote things to demean the status of the Prophet and his family in order for them to justify their own action or out of animosity and hate. Let's be frank about one thing. When Bani Umayyah took power, Bani Umayyah were at odds with Bani Hashim. Bani Umayyah were at odds with the Prophet and his family. The Prophet and his family were from the highest level of the Qurayshi community of Quraysh. And Bani Umayyah, Bani Abu Sufyan and his family were also from the highest level. The difference lies where? Lies in that Abu Sufyan and his family, Bani Umayyah, they were in charge. They were aristocrats in the sense of the monetary sense. They were rich. They controlled everything through their money. However, Bani Hashim controlled everything through their not only money, they weren't poor, but they controlled it also through their mannerisms, their behaviors, and their faith. Bani Hashim were all monotheists. They believed in the one God, the God of Ibrahim. We see this in the words of Abdul Muttal al Hashim, sorry, where he says, Ana Rabbul Ibn wa lil Bayti Rabbun Yahmih. I am the Lord of the flock, and this house, the house of Allah, has a Lord that shall protect it. Allah was a God that was worshipped. Allah was the God of Ismail and Ibrahim. However, when the polytheism started taking part in it, they did not denounce that there is a creator called Allah, but they added gods to that. Bani Umayyah, their concept of faith was on the basis of money, monetary gain, and religion. So their religion, they gained money from their religion. Bani Hashim were not that way. When the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam came and he stripped those titles from them, that power from them, one of the things that Abu Sufyan used to say is he used to say, does Muhammad not realize that gods of Quraysh, the gods that we worship, are tijaratu wa ibadah, are worship and tijara. Tijara means exchange. When you exchange money with not exchange money, exchange of goods. Tijara, when you go and you sell something off, trading goods. In that time, women were considered owned property. You owned your wife. So she was a part of your property. This was when before Islam. A woman was owned property. She was no different than any cattle you have, no different than anything that you have in your home that you own. When you die, your wife, is inherited. She is inherited to the family. So your son would inherit your wife. Not necessarily sexually, but I mean that he would inherit her as in she's a part of his inheritance, whether it be his mother or one of the other wives of the father of the deceased. The Quran came and ended this. The Quran severed this. It says women are not property for you to inherit. For those that claim that Khadija was married and had children, this goes at odds with them. Khadija, salamullahi alayha, like I said, first of all, she was known as the pure. According to our scholars, that she was not a senior when she was married. We've all heard that she's older than the Prophet by 20 years or what have you. None of that stands up to the actual for the actual evidence. According to scholars, is that she was 50 years old when she passed away. She passed away how old? Are you with me, Mustafa? Are you with me? Can you hear me? Unmute yourself. Unmute yourself.
50 years, Sheikhna.
50 years old. She died at what year?
50.
She died at the age of 50. Okay?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
She died 10 years after the Ba'tha. So after the Prophet was sent by 10 years. Okay? After the Ba'tha. She lived with the Prophet for 15 years prior to the Ba'tha. For 15 years prior to the Ba'tha. Meaning that she was with the Prophet for how many years? 25 years. If she died at the age of 50, and she lived with the Prophet for 25 years, that would make her age how old when she got married?
25. Yeah, 25.
25.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there is another opinion, but that opinion is not the opinion of Ahlul Bayt, is that she was 45 when she got married, which again, it does not stand up to any accurate historical narration. It is a simple qeel and qal. He said, she said. Any actual evidence of that or do not exist. Not only that, when I want to ask right now, if you want to ask about my mother, who would you ask? Would you ask me or would you ask someone that knows me?
You.
You would ask me. Would you ask my child or his friends?
Is your child.
Why?
Because they're directly related.
Sent them. They're the family. They're from the
Yeah.
same family. So when we want to ask about Khadija, do we ask the companions of the Prophet or do we ask the family of the Prophet?
The family of the,
Her grandson.
the family.
Sent them. So number one is the fact that she was old is eliminated. She was 25 years old. Some say 26 or 28. Okay. Number two is the fact that she was married. Let's address this issue. Number one, if the Arabs were classes. They lived in a community of classes. I come from so and so family. I am a higher class than you. You come from so and so family. You're a higher class than he. So on and so forth. And one class cannot supersede another. Nor does one class marry from another. Is that clear?
Yeah.
So I come from the clan of Beni Hashim, for example. Beni Hashim are the highest class, or one of the highest classes. Therefore, they would not marry someone below that status. Well, what about Khadija? Khadija is of the highest classes as well. Khadija, by the way, Khadija and the Prophet meet at the fifth or seventh father. They both meet at Qusay, okay, the grandfather of the Prophet Muhammad. I believe the fifth or sixth father, seventh father, something like that. Nonetheless, Khadija was an aristocrat, a very rich woman. When I mean very rich, I mean a very, very rich woman. Okay, in fact, she had so much wealth, she could not trade with all of her wealth by herself. So she used to rent people out to trade on her behalf. Right? So she would send someone to trade on her behalf, and whatever they make, they split it. She had that much money. She had more money than the rest of Quraysh put together.
Wow.
Okay? Now, the historians from the other group, they say she inherited that money from her husband. But as we proved in the past, if she had been married, then she herself would have been inherited to the husband's family. And there's no way they would have just simply let it go. They wouldn't have just simply allowed that much money and that much wealth to escape that family. Not only that, historians have no idea who these individuals are. They name them, but there's nothing in history about them at all. So they're mysterious individuals. Someone from the status of Khadija and her family does not marry someone mysterious. Now, we've addressed a couple of issues. We'll continue. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Khadija salamullah alayha, they say that she was married, and not only was she married, she actually had daughters and a son by the name of Abdullah. However, history doesn't talk about this Abdullah. Some say that he's deceased, that he passed away. Nonetheless, they say that she had daughters. Well, we prove that she could not have been married. Therefore, she could not have had daughters. And we prove that she's a pure woman and that she was considered the lady of Quraysh. Khadija had a sister by the name of Hala. Hala was married and Hala had daughters. Hala became ill. Her husband passed away. After her husband passed away, she became ill and she passed away. Logically, who would take those kids? If both of their parents passed away and you have a sister who is very rich and very capable, logically, she's the one that took her daughters. When she married the Prophet raised those daughters. Okay? Now we come to who are her offspring. Does she have any kids from the Prophet? Well, we know for a fact that she had Ibrahim, Al-Qasim. Some say Al-Qasim is older than Ibrahim, okay? Ibrahim, Al-Qasim, and Fatima, salamullahi alayha. Now, there is some that say Al-Tahir. Al-Tahir is one of the names given, it's a kunya given to Ibrahim, okay? So the three that are for sure is Ibrahim, Al-Qasim, and
Fatima.
Fatima alayha salam.
Salam.
Now, both of the Prophet's sons, Ibrahim and Al-Qasim, both of them died at a young age, with varying age differences between them. Some say that one of them died before he was weaned, meaning while he was still a baby. Others say that the other one died when he was 6 years old. Nonetheless, the surviving child of Khadija and the Prophet is Fatima alayhi salam. I don't want to get into the concept of how she met the Prophet and how she married the Prophet. Nonetheless, they did get married. What I do want to say is that Khadija, salamullahi alayha, almost every, if not every house in Quraysh, from the aristocrats, from the people of power, wanted to marry her. They wanted to marry her because she came with a lot of wealth. And at that time, when you marry a woman, what happens? You take everything from her. Her wealth becomes your wealth. Unlike today in Islam, when you marry a woman, regardless of how much money she has, that's her money. That has nothing to do with you. Is that clear? So
Yes.
right now, if my wife starts working, I have no right to take her money. If she wants to, she can give me, she can assist me, she can help me. But I have no claim to that money unless it is, what's the word? Unless it is given to me out of her own will. Nonetheless, Khadija salamullah alayha accepted and wanted the Prophet Muhammad salawatullahi wasalamu alayhi. The Prophet, in one of his quotations and one of the narrations narrated on behalf of the Prophet, he says, I love Khadija from the deepest of my heart, from my innards. I loved her deeply. There were other wives of the Prophet salawatullahi wasalamu alayhi that were jealous of Khadija. In fact, the narration says that one day the Prophet referred to Khadija, and when he used to refer to Khadija and speak about Khadija, his eyes would water, as if he wants to cry. He gets choked up. So this wife of the Prophet says to him, he says, why? She says to him, why do you always remember her? And you turn this way. Well, she was nothing but an old woman. And Allah has blessed you with someone better, meaning herself. They say the Prophet became visibly upset. He looked at her and he says, no, Allah did not bless me anybody better than Khadija. She believed in me when everyone else did not. She assisted me when everybody else abandoned me. And Allah has given me from her an offspring, and He did not give me from any of you. She was the love of his life until his very end. In fact, they narrate that one of the friends of Khadija knocked on the door of the Prophet one day, okay, to give him his salam. When he heard her, he got up excitingly because he loved Khadija so much that this friend of Khadija reminded him of Khadija. Khadija salamullahi alayha stood with the Prophet through thick and thin. When I mean through thick and thin, I mean beyond thick and thin, not just through thick and thin. Khadija salamullahi alayha. They narrate that one day. First of all, you know what? Let's go back a bit. Khadija, when she accepted the Prophet and she decided to marry the Prophet sallallahu wasalamu alayhi wa alayhi, the first thing that happened is all of the women of Quraysh cut her off. They say, why would you marry this orphan? When my brother, my father, my so-and-so wanted to marry you. You know the hate that happens there. And in fact, it still happens until our modern day. So they cut her off. When she became pregnant with Fatima alayhi salam, she was cut off from the world. We said Khadija was rich. Khadija was so rich, in fact, that when they gathered all of her belongings, It created a mountain so high that the man on the one end of this mount could not see the other on the other end, on the opposite end. And she made them call all of my wealth, all of what I own, is at the hand of Muhammad, and he may do with as he sees fit. They say the Prophet accepted, and he said, "Call the poor." They called the poor, and he gave every last piece of wealth to the poor. To the fact that Khadija and the Prophet used to sleep on a piece of leather, on a piece of leather, not a bed, not anything like that, just a piece of leather that they would have on the ground. Khadija, salamullahi alayha, we see her, she never complained that she had no more money. She never complained that she was disowned by Quraysh. She never complained of the hardship. Rather, she was the supporting wife. She would stand with the Prophet whenever something happened, and she would be with him and say that she is with him. She would support him in every action. To a point where in Shu'ab Bani Talib, in Shu'ab Bani Hashim, sorry, when the Prophet and his companions were exiled. Now, not all his companions, brothers and sisters. Was Shu'ab Bani Hashim. Only the Hashemites were exiled. Anybody else, and I don't want to go into details, but you can look into history. Where were the companions, certain companions, during that time for 8 years, when they would not allow anybody to buy or sell to the Prophet or exchange anything from the Prophet? I challenge you to go through history and ask about certain names and where they were and whether they helped the Prophet or not. Nonetheless, in those Shu'ab, Abu Talib, the protector of the Prophet, salamullahi alayhi, and Khadija, their health started deteriorating. They narrate that Khadija, salamullahi alayha, when she started passing away, she asked the Prophet for one thing. So nonetheless, if she asked him directly or indirectly, but the trust was Fatima. She entrusted Fatima onto the Prophet. The hardest times a woman goes through, the scholars say there are three things a woman needs her mother with her. The day she is married, the day she's married, sorry, the day she becomes of age, the day she gets married, and the day she gives birth. Those 3 points a woman needs to have her mother with her. However, Fatima did not have her mother, and her mother knew that the time was passing. So she wanted to ensure that there was someone there for Fatima to care for her. But Fatima took on the role of becoming Abiha. Fatima did not need support. Fatima became the mother of her father. The mother in the sense that she was the source where the Prophet received his love and the compassion and the mercy. The question that is always on my mind is Khadija worried about those 3 days that pass upon Fatima? But Khadija did not worry, or she might have not known. Nonetheless, the narrations don't tell us about this. At least I haven't read anything about this. Where Khadija asks about what happens to Fatima when Muhammad is not around. Sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. We know that on a day like this, Sayyidah Fatima, after the passing of her mother, she would come to the Prophet and she says, "Oh, my father, where is my mother? Where is she?" The narration says Jibreel descends onto the Prophet and he says, "Ya Muhammad, Allah sends you his peace and to Fatima. And he tells you to tell Fatima that your mother is in heaven in a house made of jewels. The ground is gold and the pillars of the house are from Yaqut, are from ruby. And she is accompanied by Asiya bint Muzahim, the wife of Fir'aun, the believing woman, the woman that raised Moses, and Maryam ibn Imran, the mother of Jesus. Those are her 2 companions in heaven. They say Fatima answered and she said, Inna Allah huwa salam, wa minhu salam, wa ilayhi salam. Oh, Allah, He is peace, and from Him comes peace, and to Him returns the peace. Nonetheless, nonetheless, Fatima alayhi salam took on the role that no other child could take on, that no other female could take on. And her mother passed away knowing that she was protected. However, when we come to Fatima alayhi salam, we see the opposite is true. After the passing of the Prophet, Fatima had no other protector to speak of. Fatima used to go to the grave of her father every day, and she would cry from day till night. She would cry from day until night. Sorry, excuse me for 1 second. She would cry from day until night to the point where the people came complaining to Amir al-Mu'mineen. They used to say to him, Ya Ali, tell her to cry day or night. We can't bear to hear her crying all the time. She used to go and sit by a tree. They came to that tree and they chopped the tree down. Then the Imam built a house for her, a little hut outside of the Medina where she used to go, and she used to spend her days mourning over the Prophet. They narrate that Fatima alayhi salam in her last moments before she passed away, she told the Imam, she told him, I want you to read the Quran next to my grave and care for your children. They're your children. Nonetheless, Amir al-Mu'mineen does not need to be advised. But nonetheless, a mother's heart can't bear but to advise anybody. They say one day, as the Imam is reading the Quran, he closed his eyes to rest his eyes for a second when he saw in the dream Sayyidah Fatima. And she said to him, Ya Ali, hurry, return to the house and don't come back to my grave and read the Quran anymore. He said, Fatima, why? She said, Ya Ali, I saw my daughter Zainab. She had just woken up, but she is all by herself. Brothers and sisters, if we want to sit and imagine those last moments of Sayyidah Fatima and Amir al-Mu'mineen, where they narrate that Amir al-Mu'mineen salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayha, as he was preparing Sayyidah Fatima, Asma, or Salma, sorry, was giving him, she narrated, she says, I was giving him the water and he was washing Fatima. All of a sudden he stops and he sits in the corner and he sat there and he started weeping the way a mother would weep over her one son. So I said to him, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, you are the one that teaches us patience and you act this way, this is what you do. He says, Ya Salma, la tulumini. Salma, don't blame me. As I was watching Fatima, I felt one of her ribs broken and I had not known previous of it. I had no previous knowledge of it. That's why the poet, there's a beautiful poem in Arabic. He says, Shisi Rabul Hasnain Sabra. Shisi Rabul Hasnain Sabra. What kind of patience does Rabul Hasnain have, Imam Ali have? مدري على عياله يدير فكرة يعضل ينحب كسرة. I don't know how he deals with this. I don't know what his worry is. Is he worried over his kids who are 7, 6, 5, and 4, or is he crying and weeping over the broken ribs? Then he continues this poet and he says, "Nar qalbi ma yatafi had-dumu'." I have a flame within my heart that cannot be extinguished, neither by the tears, ولا يطفيها النعي دق الجموع, nor the mourning or the beating of the chest. Says why? If you question him, he says, "بالمدينة ضلع وبكربلاء ضلوع." In the Medina there was one ضلع that was broken. However, in Karbala, right behind me, there were ribs that were broken by the same individuals, by the ideology that was started on that day, carried on until today. I ask Allah, بحق الحسين الوجيه, وبحق جده وأبيه وبحق جدته وأمه وأخيه أن يفرج عنا وأن يقضي حوائجنا. إخواني من أوصاني الدعاء والزيارة. Inshallah, after the lecture, I will enter and I will do ziyarah on behalf of my brothers and sisters. We were not allowed to enter today due to the large number of zuwar today. But inshallah, I ask you to make dua for me and my family and my parents specifically. وإلى أرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات وأرواح من مات على الهدى والإيمان. رحم الله من قرأ سورة الفاتحة مسبوقة بالصلاة على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. أحسنتم شيخنا. أحسنتم.
I apologize. I know we kind of veered off subject at the very end, but subhanallah, it was something that I did not plan for, to come all the way here to Karbala and to remember the tragedy of Karbala. But subhanallah, sometimes the tragedy one takes on, one drags to the other.
Yeah, of course, Sheikhna. We have 21 minutes, I think, yeah. Or
Brother Mustafa, we can't stay here for the whole 21 minutes. We have a limited time. So if anybody has questions within the next 5 minutes, I'll be at your service, inshallah.
Oh, there's a limited time to stay in the shrine.
Yeah.
You're saying?
Yeah.
Okay. So if anybody has any questions, I don't see any in the chat, but if anybody has any questions for the Sheikh, go ahead and ask. I'm sure. Happy to. Any questions?
السلام عليكم شيخنا.
عليكم السلام ورحمة الله.
إن شاء الله بس نسألكم الدعاء وصلاة ركعتين قضاء حاجة لو
إن شاء الله إن شاء الله إن شاء الله. بخدمتكم إن شاء الله.
أبو زهراء وياك.
والنعم منك أبو زهراء. هلا فيك. الله هلا بيك هلا بيك.
إن شاء الله.
خوش سعد مصطفى. إن شاء الله we'll wrap it up with that.
Okay, inshallah.
Inshallah, inshallah.
Sheikhna, is the shrine always this busy or?
No, today is an exception. Today is a Thursday. On Thursdays or Fridays, it gets very busy. So on any other day, inshallah, we'll try to make it on a Tuesday, Wednesday, and those days it's a lot quieter. We'll have a lot more liberty.
Inshallah. Yeah, the last time I went to the shrine of Imam Hussein was like maybe six years ago. So
okay. Inshallah. Inshallah, we'll complete the we'll get proper approvals and we'll be able to go inside and do a virtual ziyarah.
Inshallah.
Virtual ziyarah.
Inshallah, Sheikhna. Sheikhna, we don't want to hold you back. We don't want to take much of your time. So I don't see any more questions in the chat either.
Inshallah.
So yeah, that's all. شيخنا.
إن شاء الله نسألكم الدعاء جميعا.
أنتم شيخنا. بارك الله فيكم.
الله يحفظكم.
Sheikhna, what's the lecture going to be for tomorrow?
Inshallah, I'll let you know tonight for sure.
Okay, inshallah. أحسنتم شيخنا. أحسنتم. الله. مع السلامة.
مع السلامة.
All right, so it was a short lecture today because of the time limit the Sheikh had in staying in the shrine of Imam Hussein. So I guess we'll just end it here for tonight and we'll see you all tomorrow, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.